Welcome to Well Played Podcast, a show on all things playful and joyous in education. I'm your host, MrMatera, 6th grade teacher, author, and motivational speaker. Today we are chatting with Jason Ashmore. His Twitter handle's at Mr., but Mr. spelled out, _ Ashmore. And we are, like the whole idea here behind the show is some tips and tricks from another expert. Jason has done gamification for quite some time, but before we dive in, Jason, if you want to give us a brief introduction, tell us a little bit about where you're from and what you teach.
All right. I am from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So one of the most northern major cities in North America. I have been teaching this is my 16th year. I have taught a variety of subjects, junior high, elementary, and this is my 6th year in elementary and going into my 3rd year in gamification. So love it. And it's definitely been a game changer for me in terms of how I teach and deliver lessons to my students.
Yeah, so Jason really hit right on why I call him an expert, because anybody that's done gamification for a longer extended period of time, not just a unit, but a longer extended period of time, you're getting it now, you're clicking over, the odometer's clicking over to year 3. That puts you in a rare set of teachers. And that's some of the people that I want to have on this show so that we can kind of talk the wide range of people, right? So last week's episode was another questions from Paul, who's just starting out, not only teaching, but also just starting out with gamification. And then here on like the other side of the fence, we have Jason who's got experience. And so we want to hear a little bit about your story here. When did you begin gamifying? How did that get rolled out?
Basically, it began rolling out when I was in my 3rd year in elementary. I started looking at the fact that I was teaching, started basically with grade 6 social studies. In Alberta, the grade 6 curriculum is looking at government and looking at local and provincial government here. And for a lot of students, that's not the most exciting topic. And for most teachers, it's not the most exciting topic. So in order to make it interesting and engaging for myself, I was looking for things and ways to engage students. So I began with reading Teach Like a Pirate by David Burgess, and then that led me into basically the pirate series. I pick a lot of books based on cool titles, so the word pirate kind of got me in. So
Yeah, of course.
I read Teach Like a Pirate, I read Play Like a Pirate, and then I got to Explore Like a Pirate, and then that kind of led me into gamification, and I read another author, Scott Hebert, who is a local guy up here who's written a couple of books, and I've been to a couple of his presentations, and yeah, so it kind of basically snowballed, and I took it and ran with it and kind of gamified just one subject for an entire year, and the students loved it, and they asked when I was going to, if I could do it into other subjects. So the following year I went all in and went into
Nice.
all four core areas, which was a lot of work. And then this year I've moved schools, changed grades. So yeah, it's a little bit even more work, because when I gamified grade 6, I really knew the curriculum well, so I kind of could build quests and ideas in my head. And now that I'm changing over to a brand new curriculum, I'm starting to think more along the lines of when I'm looking at designing lessons or projects, I'm having that game element in mind. So it's really helped me to expand my own practice and thoughts in teaching on how I deliver the content to the students.
Yeah, so I think that brings up a really good point that like for teachers who are thinking about getting into gamification, if you are somebody that has already a really solid handle on the curriculum because you've done it now for a couple of years, gamification can be nice because you kind of, for lack of a better term, freed up a little mental space because you're not so pared down with what am I exactly teaching tomorrow. Uh,
Exactly.
you can then, I think, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I think you can throttle all of that like mental energy that you now freed up into an engaging like theme that can like wrap around your experience, ways to sort of deliver that content in a meaningful and engaging way. But there's a lot of teachers that sort of get to that point, and then they don't apply that energy towards delivery.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I hope my book and other books and sessions and whatever can get teachers to sort of be at. But then you sort of talked about the other side when you switch curriculum or grade levels. There's like a learning curve to that, but you've kind of spoke about that in a positive as well. Like now
Yeah.
you're getting a fresh start, and you're still like applying that delivery mentality.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people that I've talked to, and I try to when I talk to people about gamification, because people are began knowing that, because I've presented a couple of times within my own district on this, and through social media people kind of know who I am, so people have been starting to come up to me and ask questions. And I think the big thing I always tell them is start small and keep it simple. You don't have to game every time and through
Yep.
every single solitary element. I always like to do things like, when I tell people, I said it's like a video game. When you first get a video game, that first opening uh, probably 10, 15 minutes is just learning how to get your character to do certain things. So it's kind of like tutorials. And so for me, I like the fact that I always tell my students, I said, we're going to tutorial, which is basically, for older kids, I would call it like a memory dump. I'm going to basically load you with every piece of content you need to know rather quickly to give you kind of a basics of feeling of understanding and okayness. Bad word, okayness. But then what we want to do is, once they're through the tutorial, then they can start questing and working at their own pace. And for me, what I like to use the word is preserving the knowledge. So in my game, the heroes are there to help um, a group of island. My game is called the Isles of Democray. And so on the Isles of Democray, students are in their guilds and they work their way through various islands, helping the islanders overthrow a particular group of people who are trying to suppress them. And so, depending on the topic, they come across different characters that they have to help. Sometimes it's children, sometimes it's adults. And so, for me, the big thing is preserving the knowledge. And I remember when I first started doing that word, preserve the knowledge, and students would come up to me and they'd be like, "What does that mean, preserve the knowledge, Mr. Ashmore?" And I'm like, "I don't know. What does preserve the knowledge mean?" And we'd have this whole debate where I would really be very loose and not answering the actual question. And so finally, students are like just asking if they could do, well, could I do a video? And I'm like, sure. Could I do a poster? Sure. Could I do a skit? Sure. Could I ask other people to join me in doing this? Yes, you can. And before long, you go from a teacher who has a project where every student is basically giving you 25 to 30 Google slide presentations to getting 25 to 30 various different levels of projects, and the amount of creativity that
I love it.
students want to put into it really, it depends on the kids, and kids are willing to try things. I had a student one time do a scratch coding game as his way of preserving knowledge about sky science, and I was like, this is phenomenal. So,
That's one of the things I
it's,
love about gamification that I think for people that just sort of read about it on a blog post and then decide whether they want to do gamification or not, this is one of those things they miss. They never
yeah,
dig deep enough to realize like gamification, yes, while we often talk about game mechanics and other things like that, what that all translates to in terms of the student is an environment in which they're excited, in an environment where they feel connected with their fellow like teammates, and in an environment which like truly fosters sort of endless creativity and like where the sky's the limit in terms of like what they can and should create because they're no longer pared down to this like grade or like this rubric. It's
yeah.
truly like I mean, in your story, it like perfectly encapsulated it, where kids light bulbs started going off. Like, can I do this? And I'm sure once they even chose the project of can I do X,
Yeah.
it was still like probably with inside that it was starting to be like, well, we could add this to it, or this would be better, or let's try this inside that project. I think that is probably more than anything what has kept me doing gamification year over year. Like I like the game mechanics and I think it's neat and I think it's fun and it's interesting, but like what I see in terms of the impact on students is so much more than just some points and badges and all this other stuff that I think I wish people would dig just slightly deeper because, like, holy cow, what it means in the end is so big.
Yeah. And for me, I look at, like, as a teacher, yeah, you're teaching for the 1 year, but you're also trying to create skills. And to me, the nice thing about gamification is that you're teaching students to work together and to cooperate and to think creatively and not always give the exact same thing. I look at a lot of the um, large major corporations, Google, Voxcom, Apple, like a lot of these major corporations now are starting to not really care where you got your university degree from. They want to know, can you think creatively? Can you troubleshoot? Can you work with people and get along? And to me, that's one of the powerful things about gamification is in my game, the students are randomly put into guilds. So they might be in a class where they don't necessarily get along with everybody, and you're in with a group of students that you have to work with for the entire year, and you have to do a variety of different things with that group. You have to sometimes work together, sometimes you get to work alone, and ultimately, you have to do the best that you can to get the job done and think outside the box. Like, yeah, you could give me a Google slide, but that's not the best. That's kind of sometimes I consider not the best way, but what are some other more creative ways? And for some students, that's hard for them to think that way. I know one of the things I want to try this year is when my students come across a dragon in the game, I want them to have to create a song or a musical so that they have to soothe the savage beast in order to get by them. So I want them to find some kind of curricular connection and, you know, do about dragons and try to get past the dragons. So hopefully it kind of works. I don't know. We'll see.
I think that that's another good example too, where you're just freed up as the teacher to sort of almost try anything because in the context of the storyline, like, okay, I'm gonna try to write a lyric here. I'm gonna try to do
Yeah,
it, and I'm gonna get my like three other group mates to like sing it with me or whatever, do a little barbershop quartet on it or whatever. But like
exactly.
without the context of the game, I mean, can you picture a teacher saying like, "Ah, I want you to sing a song tomorrow"? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
No.
like no, no, no. Like in middle school, no way. But you
No.
put it in the context of this game, like, oh, we're gonna like sometimes encounter dragons, and then the
Yeah.
only thing we've learned to like calm them down is to sing a little lyric. So
Yeah.
like, boom, like now my kids, my middle school, my jaded middle school kids are still gonna be like, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy how that works. But I also like the again that sort of endless creativity, and what I've seen over the years is just this, like you said, these skills that are truly powerful well beyond the year that you teach the students. Like,
Yeah.
I think I have become even a better teacher because I'm giving my students lifelong skills while teaching social studies, right? But it's
Yeah.
almost these lifelong skills, these creative tasks, these uh, collaborations that they have to be in, effective communication skills, independent skills. I mean, tons of things in gamification. Like, they have to sort of figure it out. And like, side quests are a great example where like I don't give a rubric, and yeah, at the beginning of the year, their side quests are kind of junky because like they don't get that I really want quality, so they scribble something quick and hand it in, and I don't give them any points for it. But like, this is the power, and I love having an episode with somebody that's also like kind of an expert here,
Yeah.
that we see the value of the year long experience because
Mm.
it's like anything else. It's coaching, right? And we're coaching kids up in creativity. We're coaching kids up in grit around creativity. We're coaching kids up in a collaborative model, and I just see such great gains. Being a sixth grade teacher, I don't have the magical moment of, teaching a kid to read. Like I don't have
Yeah.
this like you came, you couldn't read, and now you can. Like,
Hmm.
but since doing gamification, I do feel like I have these magical moments. Like you came in kind of up through the factory model of school, and you were ready to like memorize some stuff and spit it
Yeah.
out at me. And at the end of this year, a year of concentrating on all this stuff, you are forever changed. And like that's my teach them to read moment, and I love it.
Yeah, no, and like for me, it's great because as the teacher, like kind of, you get to control the game. It gives you an opportunity to differentiate for a lot of students. You get to decide, as you said, even with the side quests, for certain students, you know, the best for them, isn't necessarily the best for everybody else. But
Hmm.
you help and encourage, and I get a lot of parents who are like, "Well, where's the homework?" And for me, I'm not a big proponent of the word homework, but for me, I find that magically you can get kids to do the homework when you call it a side quest, additional things. You get them to do homework because they want to finish the quest sooner than somebody else. They're willing to try something at home and work at home, and they start talking about school. Um, my oldest daughter just started grade one, and of course, you ask her what she did today, and the best thing is recess. And to me, like like we were talking earlier, like you know, I was at my new school, um, and they had their open house, and a lot of the teachers there were telling me that you'd only get three or four parents, and I got 12 of my 24 families to come because they wanted to see me because they wanted to know more about the game, or their kids were so excited to
That's
show them
awesome.
stuff, and like they came into the room and they asked me if they could show them their guild flag. And we've been doing some writing on hero backstories, and we've been using a program called Hero Forge to help the students kind of create the visual of what their character would look like. And I had students come in and they're like, "Mr. Ashmore, is it okay if I show my parents my character on Hero Forge?" And I'm like, "Sure, by all means, go ahead." And parents were just like, "Oh, I've been hearing about your game. Like, can you tell me a little bit more about it?" And you know, like because I'm new to the school, I've been really kind of slow playing it a little bit this year. So next week we really get into it. The kids will receive their satchels. So it's their opportunity to get their in my case it's a duotang, which will hold their character sheets, their health point tracker, and all their cards. So those are some things that I'm kind of excited about being able to share with the kids, and then we get into basically kind of our first major quest in language arts. So
What I love about that story about like the back to school night sort of experience is that just again shows how communal we are and how connected they feel in your classroom, that they wanted to not only like show their parents things they really wanted to like, even like you said, their guild crest or whatever, that's their group's flag. That's,
yeah.
like that's not even solely their work or their idea, but they were proud of this community they're in.
Hmm.
uh, and there's nothing better than the salesmanship of the child, right? Like you got half your parents to come when that is for your school well
Yeah.
above the average, because the student went home, probably day after day, blabbing on and on and on about your game and your
Yeah.
experience, and parents are like, I gotta check this out. Like that's wild.
Yeah, no, and I'm very excited to try. my new literacy station idea. So for those listeners, John Meehan wrote a book called Adrenaline Rush, and it was a great read, and it gave me an idea in terms of students when you're in literacy stations or any stations for that matter, and you have a time in that station that some students don't need as much time as you give them, and others need more time than what you give them. So why not be able to give them choice? So what I did is I took normally what I would do with my literacy stations, and I basically decided to assign experience points to those literacy stations, and the stations that will take more effort and more time are more experience points, and those that are fairly quick and easy are less experience points. And then students are going to work their way through the various stations over the course of 2 weeks. And if I find that some students are finishing them really good, the nice thing is you can add more stations, and you don't have to add a whole nother round. You can add one or two in and get things going. And so, yeah, so students will be starting that. And the great thing is I put it out on Twitter, and I've had like 3 or 4 teachers from various parts of North America ask if I would be willing to share that resource with them. And yeah, so I shared it last night, and people are like super excited and excited to see it work with their grade threes or fours or even into up into middle school. So
Can I ask you, is the template to be shared, is that something that's in Google?
well, I did it as a Google slide. And basically, I just I found a picture of an alchemist's lab, and so I started with a picture, and that picture led me to my first kind of quest backstory. In that
Hmm.
the heroes show up on the island, everything is in devastation. They stumble across an older gentleman who can't understand really what's going on or what happened, but he then tells the heroes that there is an alchemist's laboratory that buried deep underground, and so he takes them there, and so the heroes go down into the alchemist's um, laboratory, and the alchemist basically is there to tell them, kind of, this is your first opportunity in skill. So still kind of working on it. I have until Tuesday to fine tune my story, but basically it's the stations this time around are more or less to help students become better writers, so that they can work on that. So I'm just trying to
Would
find.
you mind sharing, like, with this episode, what I can do
Yeah,
is I can put a link to the Google file, and you can make it view only, so everybody would have to go file, copy. Please do not
yeah,
request access. Like, whenever I
yes,
share something, that's what everybody does, request access. It's like, no, you gotta go file, copy, and you can do whatever
yeah,
you want with the copy.
yeah,
But would you be willing to share that?
for sure. Yeah, yeah.
So anybody listening to this, if you're listening on, iTunes or Spotify or something like that, if you jump over to my YouTube channel, this is episode 128, and in the description below there'll be a link to Jason's sort of template that you can use, and just again go file, make copy, and you
Yes,
can do
big
whatever.
big thing. File copy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you for that. That's awesome. Um, Now I'm curious too, like with you rolling this out and with you being at a new school. Uh, some people, like, teaching is something that we sometimes have to move and go to a new school, or sometimes we want to try a new grade level.
Yeah.
When you switch schools, were you at all sort of nervous about this might be the end of gamification? For you from one
Um,
experience to the next.
yes and no. Nervous because, of course, when you build a game, you get kind of accustomed to the quests every, doing certain things, and you want to fine tune. And when this year, when I was moving to a new grade, I knew right away I'd have to redo all of my quests. So all of that would basically have to start from scratch, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it's good to basically scrap everything and start again.
Mm-hmm.
But being a more experienced teacher, um, I decided to treat it a little bit more like if you were in a sports person in free agency. That's how I kind of look at it. Is I'm a
Nice.
free agent.
I
I'm
love it.
applying to your school, and I know you really want me, but here are my expectations. So I have an alternative seating arrangement. I don't typically, so however many students I have, I don't have desks for everybody. We get to sit on the floors, we can work in corners, we can kind of do whatever. So when I sat down at the end of the interview and they said, "Do you have any questions?" My questions are yes. Can I run my game in my room, and can I have alternative seating? And if the answer is not yes to both,
Then this
thanks
isn't the right one.
thanks for the interview, but I'm gonna go back and keep doing my thing at my old school. And yeah, sure enough, like for me, my new administrative team, that was the one reason they had hired me. They had heard great things about the stuff that I was doing in my room and the work that was happening with the students in my room, and how because of my game, I had an increase in attendance at my old school. So all those positive things that we try to work with on, engaging students and wanting them to come to school, I was able to accomplish. So I kind of want to continue that trend. So yeah, but yeah, it is. And I understand, like teachers, that's the biggest thing is even if you have an administrative change in the school you're
Mm-hmm.
in, new administration comes in, they might not understand what it is. And yeah, my administrative team is super supportive, and the principal even told me that she wants me to share with the staff and share with her and help her learn more about the power of gamification.
That's awesome. I love it. And I don't know. I hope people take. I don't know. I hope people take some advice from you. I like this idea of having, not for lack of a better term, sort of some non-negotiables. Like you, maybe this comes with time of teaching. You've taught 16. I've taught a similar amount. Like you know what you want, and you know where you're going to be most optimal. And so
Yeah.
to be honest in that interview, like these are things that are highly important to me, and these are what I value as a teacher,
Yeah.
and putting
Well,
those things out there.
it's the same thing. Like I look at it now and go, like we no longer have chalkboards in the classroom. If you're used to using a certain piece of technology like a document camera, having a class set of Chromebooks, or
Yeah.
like to me, there are certain things that you now as a teacher need to ask for. Like, you know, um, a long time ago, a great saying is, "What's the worst that someone says? No."
Yep.
Like that's the worst thing. Like, I've said it's better to ask for forgiveness sometimes, and sometimes ask for permission. Like if the kids are excited and engaged and show up to school and love your room and love learning, I find it hard that any administrator is going to be like, "No, this is a bad idea." Like that's the number one thing is you can't teach who's not there. So you need to get kids in the door. And one of the best ways to do that is to make school not school. Like I'm very open and honest with my students. I didn't like school when I was a kid. It didn't work for me. And I ultimately really don't like how some education is run now. I find that we're very institutionalized about certain things. One of the great things is, you can sometimes find them online, a comparison of school and prison. You have to ask to go to the bathroom, you have to
Yep.
wait in a line, you have to be quiet. And for me, that doesn't necessarily work for all kids. Like for lots of students that you have in your class.
Hopefully, all kids, it doesn't work going to prison.
Yes, yes. Hopefully none of them go to prison. But in terms of um, like talking, like there's lots of students who the reason they talk in class is because they don't have anyone to talk to at home. No one's
Hmm.
there to talk to. And, to me, that's what I want. So, some people come into my room and go, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing? How do you handle the chaos?" And I'm like, yeah, there's times it's like, "Oh, what are we doing?" And there's other times where, it's calm and everyone's working, and, it's really quiet. other times it's loud and crazy. And to me, as a teacher, if you're not having fun, it's hard to get kids excited about learning.
Yeah. Well, we are already at reflection time,
Oh
and
wow, it does go fast.
it does. It's fun to talk shop, right?
Yes. Oh, it is. It is. Yes. My wife tells me that I would like to talk shop all the time, and I'm like, well, I said when you like what you do, it's fun to talk about.
You got it. So today, for our reflection time quote, I'm gonna do a little something different. We got a
Okay.
quote, uh, but I want to give you like your target audience in which you're responding this quote for. So this one, I want you to think about it just in terms of teachers, not
Okay.
students.
Okay.
Okay. This quote comes from Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it goes, "It is a happy talent to know how to play."
Okay. A happy talent to know how to play.
But
Um,
specifically just for teachers.
Specifically to teachers. I think that if you love what you do, it doesn't become so much work as it becomes something you enjoy. And to me, play is one of those things where if you can incorporate play into every day, then you're going to love it. You know, um, as an adult, you think back to when are some of the happiest times in your own life or things you enjoy doing. It usually revolves around play. As a child growing up, into your teenage years, into your young adult, playing, interacting, and being with other people usually are those times where you're enjoying the most, and it's sometimes where you can learn the most, is learn through play and experience those elements of excitement and trying something new and willing to take risk, all for the sake of play.
Yeah, I love. I mean, this quote obviously would be super easy to answer in terms of students. Like it's fun to play and kids learn through play.
Yeah,
Uh, but like so many other quotes, so many other people talk about, somehow over life we become sort of stodgy adults, and you know we don't play, right? And I love his point here. It's a happy talent, and it's a
yeah,
talent I think I would love other people to develop. I mean, when we think of any other talent, it's through time and effort that we become better at it. And so I don't know. I encourage everyone on this podcast to sort of think about how they can start to develop, take steps towards developing that happy talent of knowing how to play, whether that's playing with your children, whether that's playing with
yeah,
your students, or to be honest, and I think the pinnacle here is if you can have a playful spirit in your own life, like that will translate to having a playful spirit with your own children and your students. But like, how do you play? Like personally, So challenge yourself to do that, and I think that it'll trickle down to all the other categories of your life.
exactly.
Um, Jason, so thank you so much for coming on to this well played episode. It was excellent having you. You've been in the
Thank
XP
you
Lab
for
chats for quite
having me.
some time. It's always been fun seeing you come back to those XP Lab chats. Hopefully, you'll be able to make it tonight.
Yes, all depends on the book.
That's right. That's right. And everyone else, thank you so much for listening or watching. Again, you can find this episode on my YouTube channel. If you want to post a comment about today's episode, we'd love to see it, and we'd love to hear from you. As always, everybody, enjoy your week and play on.